Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast, where, as usual, Angie Setzer, the glamorous Angie Setzer, will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out of the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed on this basis session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the glamorous Angie Setzer. Angie, how are you, my love?
I'm good. First off, I almost spaced on your co-host invite. Like I was like, oh shit, I gotta respond to that. So that, if that tells you anything about where I'm at, like mentally,
Do you know what? I
yeah.
had a very similar thing happen this morning. I was trying to type the word and I like paused and I froze and I didn't know where to start. And I was like, what is going on?
I think I glitched. I'm not 100%
Yeah, that's
sure.
it. Exactly
Secondly,
that.
if you saw me right now, like your use of glamorous would be even more ironic than usual. So that's my favorite
Lies.
thing. My favorite thing. So happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Thunderdome, you guys. Really just, like, I knew this week was going to suck for grains, right? And I think I've said this more than once. Like, I knew this wasn't going to be a great week because we got the report next week. Like, no one's going to pop their head up and buy ahead of it. And we'll talk about, we got the expectations, the official, trade expectations. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, we knew that, really ahead of Monday, it was going to be hard to generate buying interest. And honestly, like the spec is just going to kind of continue to pound this thing because why the hell not? It's the path of least resistance. But still not enjoying it. Straight up not having a good time. Next year I'm taking vacation ahead of the report, I think. Maybe. Probably not though, because I never do that.
I was going to say, who are you kidding?
Right? Exactly. I do have one planned for August, so that'll probably be when we rally and put in the high of the market. So, but anywho, what are we paying attention to today? Me more than anything, and I'm not going to start with geopolitical crap, and I'm not going to start with trade. I am watching, the situation in Brazil, just simply because, we did get another update, another, yield or production estimate yesterday that was pretty lofty. So lofty, as a matter of fact, that when I thought it was a total crop estimate, their Safrina crop estimate at 123. I thought it was a total crop estimate. I'm like, what is everyone all up in arms about? Like, that's just, that's actually, that's between CONAB and the USDA. That's not really a big deal. And then I realized that was just Safrina only, which basically would kind of point to a 150 Brazil crop from a very well-trusted source. You know what I mean? Though I will say I'm probably going to pump the brakes on that one. I feel like we tend to do this almost every year, where it's all of a sudden like, wow, weather was pretty good, like probably better than we thought it would be. Like we should kind of probably bump yields up, and then all of a sudden we just get crazy with the cheese whiz. Totally expecting the same thing to happen. That's a quote from Beck, by the way. He was a great market analyst, just in case you weren't sure. And so, we just have this sort of tendency where it gets to be, and like I said, I'm waiting for the US crop, the same sort of thing where it's like 181, it's a 185. And then the next guy's like, no, it's a 186. My proprietary data says 188. Like you go ahead.
A phone call?
No, I'm here. Can you not hear me now? Can everyone else hear me? I don't know if anyone else can thumb up.
Can anyone still hear Angie?
I think you can still hear me. Let me mute.
Dum, dum, dum.
Let me come back.
You
can you hear me now?
Can
you hear me now?
Unmuted. Oh, his face is having a bit of a funny moment.
I think so. Someone says they can hear me, so I'm just going to keep going. Let me type a message to Ryan.
Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear Angie and it's just me that can't hear Angie?
Yep. Okay. We're just going to keep partying.
Okay,
Ryan just needs to go sit in the corner and think about what he did. I don't know what he did, but anyway, he can't even hear that joke. But, so what I'm paying attention to right now is that it feels like, the Brazil crop size is just kind of one of those things where it's like, we're going to, get it bigger and bigger, and we're waiting to see, what is going on, and then that's where the cash market's going to come into play. So that's where my focus lies today, kind of, is what is going on in the cash market and what are we seeing happen when it comes to true movement out of Brazil here in the short term? Because right now you've got a world end user that is sitting here waiting for this 135, 150, crop to come off out of Brazil and to come into the marketplace at much cheaper, than where it's currently being offered. And so the thing that we're seeing now, though, is that you have a really delayed harvest. You had a big frost happen in Paraná that's going to delay the drying of the crop. when it comes down to it, like there's going to be several things that are going to make it more difficult for Brazil to compete. Overall, like just into the global market currently. And, we're going to be watching that simply because, it's just something that everyone's anticipating this big flow of grain. If it doesn't happen, they have to turn to the U.S. And so we did see, I think, a tender out of South Korea last night, yesterday that, basically it's looking like it will have to come out of the U.S. There's a few other trades that have been put on recently that would be scheduled to move out of Brazil, July, August timeframe. Eduardo says that they're having a very difficult time trying to source these bushels. Exporters are currently looking at negative margins to do so. And so if we do have a bunch of corn around in the USDA or US, or we do see Argentina, maybe Ukraine comes in, though they don't seem to have much to offer into the global market. It just is one of those things that we have to pay attention to. When it all comes down to it, everyone is kind of talking about this 40 to 45 million metric ton Brazilian corn export program. This is not news. So like we're talking about this big crop getting bigger, and there's worry that Brazil's going to take over our market share. But the USDA, even with a 2.675 billion bushel new crop corn export projection, is, kind of counting a 43 million metric ton export program out of Brazil. So this isn't necessarily news to the market, but it's giving the funds, a tailwind to kind of continue to sell on with this expectation that you're going to see this big flush of corn into the market. And right now there's a lot of questions, especially if you see a slow harvest, and, all of these other things, it matters. And the slower the harvest that you have, the more you're able to absorb as well. So the less of a harvest logistics pinch and some of these other things that you experience, you're just, so big picture, why this matters, just kind of to back myself up and why I think it's important is the market has a certain set of expectations. This set of expectations hinges on Brazil really kind of following through. The Brazilian farmer selling into the market, the Brazilian exporter also selling into the market, in a relatively aggressive position or a program that starts August and basically has to wrap up by the middle part of January, because that's when bean exports start again. So Brazil's got a window of opportunity here. It's about 5 months long, from an export standpoint that they really have to start hitting. And so to see them at half of the pace is what they were at in 2023 when they had that 40 million metric ton program. Like right now they've exported 7 million metric tons, or they have 7 million metric tons of corn on the books so far. It's half of where they were in 2023. And the slower you see that grow, the harder it is for them to hit that 40 million metric ton. Cause like I said, they have a window. Now, could this screw U.S. corn in Q4? Sure. But is U.S. corn, does U.S. corn tend to experience a big export window in Q4 anyway? No. So I'm not really sure what we're up in arms about, but I guess I'll just join in on the fray and we can all lose our minds. That'll be one thing that we'll really kind of pay attention to. We obviously have Yes.
Just a quick one. Can you hear me?
He's back! Right. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, hang on. Why is it all,
I don't know. We got a nice little echo though. It sounds like you're the Wizard of Oz. He left us. He's gone again. And he's gone again. Looking at next week's report, and he can jump in at any time and I'll shut up and let him ask his question because we love Ryan's questions. And then it makes me feel like I'm not just talking for 15 minutes straight. But we have next week's report. We got our official estimates out. Average analyst estimate going into next week is just a tiny little cut to corn acres that's not a cut to corn acres. It's basically in line, a little bit of an increase. 95.35 million acres of corn is what traders are expecting. There you are. You don't sound echoey now.
Cool. Can I, sorry, I've got a question, but it's one of those questions, sorry, but it kind of relates to what you were just talking about. It's one of those questions where you want to ask it, but then you've not asked it for so long that it becomes a bit embarrassing.
No, there's no such thing as stupid questions here. It's a safe space.
Bear with me. And obviously, just to shout out to everyone, to just remind everyone that I am not an agricultural trader. I learn more from this show than probably anyone else. What is safrinha?
It's Brazil's second crop. So safrinha actually means small crop, but it's Brazil's biggest production. So after they plant soybeans, after they harvest soybeans, they'll put corn in on a portion of those acres. And so they used to call it the small crop because you didn't have the demand for it. They didn't really need a bunch of corn to follow through. And now it's their bulk of their production.
Perfect.
So it's kind of ironic.
I feel educated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yes, no, like I said, no such thing as stupid questions. So definitely we'll be watching grain flow on that side and just more in the way of crop estimates from the Safrina side. Going to next week's report, we have an average analyst estimate, like I was saying, on corn at 95.35. The range of estimates is 93.75 to 96.8. So about a 3 million acre range. I don't know. That feels tight to me. And so that probably means we're going to get a pretty, we have the chance of a decent surprise there. I'm going to go back through kind of historicals, but, in years past, we've had a few times where, like last year, I remember distinctly, we actually had an increase in acres. So we did start at 90 million. So it was a little bit more of an easy thing to see. We started at 90 million, bumped up on the June number. And then when FSA data came out in August, we went back down. And so the June number's okay, but it's survey driven and it scares the shit out of me. So that'll be fun. But really everyone's just kind of anticipating acreage to stay relatively close to the same. Bean acres, they're expecting a slight increase. The range in estimates is 82.5 to 85.3. Beans are 83, basically average estimates, 83.655. All winter wheat's expected to stay pretty much in line, maybe a little bit of it, or all wheat, a little bit of an increase anticipated. So we're really just going to be watching also quarterly stocks. The average analyst estimate on the quarterly stocks number is pointing to an increase or what would be more, than what we should have. Like everyone's kind of arguing that the old crop cash market is pointing towards more corn on hand. I've seen some analysts come out, looking at RMA data versus NAS data, and saying there's some pretty major discrepancies that point to a larger production number in the U.S. I emailed Lance this morning from NAS just to ask him straight up, like instead of me guessing, I'm just going to see what Lance has to say about it. So we will address that here eventually too, just kind of, is there a wide spread? Is there something that we have to be watching? But yeah, Monday's report will be the big thing, that we're all paying attention to. And then beyond that, it's just trade updates. I guess there's some hiccups with India. Sounds like us trying to tap into their agriculture side of things. They're a little bit bummed about. But it does, we have seen a few different folks say that we'll have some big announcements coming soon. Though I feel like we've been saying that for a minute. Like we had 90 deals in 90 days was going to be announced. And then it's kind of turned into, it looks like 3 of them, coming soon. Maybe Japan's coming back for their 7th meeting. So I guess fingers crossed that this time for sure it's a charm. And then we have South Korea and Vietnam, which we already knew Vietnam was really aggressively working. We're watching the EU though. They're kind of threatening, but we did have the NATO summit. I wanted to ask you, Ryan, your thoughts on that. Because we did see the NATO summit today. Your countries did agree to up their defense spending, to make Trump happy. But you did see Macron say we can't do both. We can't do a trade war and up our defense spending. So any thoughts on that? Because I feel like that NATO summit might be important.
Yeah, Spain have come out flatly and said, no, yeah, we're not hitting 5%.
Right.
If we did,
we can't do it.
We'd have to up taxes. The countries that are kind of very bullish. Sorry if there is an echo.
No, there isn't. You're good now. Totally good now.
Okay. Like for instance, the UK is very bullish and say, yeah, we can hit 5%. But as the Germans have been doing for a long time now, it relies on creative accounting. For instance, the UK is spending up to billion to kind of rejuvenate rural broadband in the country, and that's being labelled as defence spending.
Nice.
So it's all getting a bit, the accountants are doing very well on this. But just one thing I thought is probably worth mentioning is, especially with the EU trade talk, is as me and you mentioned, funny enough, like about a month ago, it feels like years ago, but about a month ago, how Meloni, obviously the Italian leader, she was like the first head of state to go over and see Trump, and we were saying, look, anyone that thinks that she's doing this with the EU flag in her back pocket is mistaken. She's doing Italy first, and we're seeing, we mentioned at the time that there's a potential that other nations within the EU will get fed up with the EU doing the brickmanship and the negotiations on this. And people were kind of calling me a bit of an idiot, saying no, they're all they're all friends. They'll come as like one team to market. But we saw, yes, they for the German leader basically flat out say but the way the EU are handling this is completely bonkers and far too complicated. And he just wants them to focus on the car industry and heavy industry. So I think we're seeing a bit of fragmentation within the EU of, some fairly big players within the EU falling out with the bureaucracy of the EU and how they're handling the trade negotiations. And as we know, Trump is not a fan of the EU. So it'll be really interesting to see how the whole dynamics of the EU kind of play out in the coming months, because quite frankly, I think they're way off getting a deal.
Yes, it seems like they are. The EU's threatened, right, that they'll put tariffs on, or they've got their retaliation in place. I mean, I think right now, though, what feels like the most obvious to me is that you see them get an extension. And maybe I'm wrong in that, but and maybe you don't. Maybe it's July 9th comes and all of a sudden we're going to tit for tat each other, and then July 13th is here and we have an extension and both back off.
Definitely extensions are in play, and we know that. Everyone loves a good can kicking, especially in Washington.
Yes.
What I'd be interested to see is if we haven't got deals with some other major nations. I think then there's a lot of scope for the big can to be kicked. What I'd be really interested in to see is if we do get some of these deals over with some some kind of temporary relief deals with say, South Korea, India, Japan, China. If we get those kind of deals across the line, I think it's then less likely that the EU gets an extension.
It is true. If everyone else comes to the table,
If there's no deals done, then we're gonna get one big can kick. If there's enough deals in place or in motion, I think Trump, we've dropping F-bombs yesterday. You can very easily just stick two fingers up to the EU and say, well, look, we've got enough deals, keep us going. You guys sort yourselves out.
It'd be interesting to see because it'd probably splinter a few of them because there are Germany,
absolutely.
especially Italy. So, it'll be something that will, we've got 2 weeks basically now. So today is the official mark of 2 weeks before they come back, the tariffs. And so something to watch. Lastly, something positive that I'm going to share because I feel like no one has anything positive and we're just not going to even talk about what the markets are doing right now because they're dead to us. Right? Positive news. I am hearing, good things from some of my sources on the inside about, the 45Z verbiage in the Senate bill. So there was some disappointment with some of the Senate, conversation with the 45Z, which is that biofuel blenders tax credit. This goes to producers, obviously, versus the blenders as before. But there is a conversation there that they won't have as much of an access, or there was, a loophole, I guess you could say, or an opening for more in the way of imported feedstocks in the Senate version of the 45Z wordage. And so there's talk that they're kind of more matching the House. We'll get the official version of it this afternoon from what I'm hearing. And so hopefully that's as good as what everyone is saying. It will be, because we definitely could use that shot in the arm. Also hearing that we'll hear some good things supportive to the industry. When I say good things, I guess it depends on who you are or what side of the industry you're in. But for soybean farmers, also hearing good things on SRE, in some of what the EPA is going to do in that regard. It does sound like the White House is listening to some of these calls when it comes to hey, biofuels, is a pretty decent way to kind of support the U.S. farmer without having to send them a check every year. And so there are some things that we're seeing there that should be positive. Though at this point, like I said before, ahead of next week's report, I don't think anyone I don't even know if they know there's a buy side of the market with the way this thing is acting. So I guess we'll see. But lots to be paying attention to. More than anything, I'm going to be watching, like I said, the grain movement out of Brazil and what their cash markets start to do and what that means. If right now you're seeing end users starting to secure demand for August into September. And basically from what Eduardo is saying at AgriInvest, you've got about 20 days, 3 weeks time, before we really start seeing them, aggressively enter, or they're supposed to be aggressively entering in, to the market for August coverage. And if we see a continuation of the slower pace and cheaper prices and some of these other things, then it's going to bring that, export book into question, at least in the short term. So that's all we got. We went on a little longer than what we needed to, but
Awesome.
there we are.
Well, yeah,
We had technical difficulties.
I'll take the race. Technical difficulties, and I rambled on a little bit. But just quickly before we go,
like
as if by magic, I've just noticed a headline that these cool people at PIQ have just posted about 23 minutes ago. When I was talking about creating accounting to achieve NATO targets, the Italian PM, Meloni, has said the new NATO targets for higher defence spending give countries total flexibility on how to achieve them. So there we go. Fire up the
you can, as long as you say you're doing it, we don't care what you're doing.
exactly.
Just say it. So it fits.
Exactly. Cool. Well, Angie, thank you so much as always. Again, everyone, I apologise for the poor sound quality on my end and my just general technical issues. I have no idea what's going on my laptop.
We'll blame it on Twitter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. We really do appreciate you. Whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.